In our final two examples, we're going to be addressing the question of how do we adjust the menu items that have been defined by other modules, and how do we change the value of what's returned from page callback functions for functions that have been defined by other modules. So we're going to start with that second part. We're going to take a look at how to adjust render arrays that have been defined by another menu callback function. Okay, go ahead and jump to your module directory and open up step 9, which is hook page alter. Go ahead and copy the code and paste it over your pages.module file, overwriting everything that's in there already. The only item that we've added to this file is this last function here, pages page alter. And this is a hook, an implementation of hook page alter. So it's going to have the structure, the name of our module, underscore page alter. And it takes as a single parameter the page array, and it's passing it as a reference. So any changes that we make to this array inside of the function will get passed to the parent function as well. What I want to do here is set a breakpoint and take a look at this page array before we start to manipulate it. The idea of hook page alter is that before content gets rendered into the HTML that we see on the page, modules have a final chance to make adjustments to the render array that's being passed to the render function. If we've built our pages correctly, then it makes modifying the code inside of the render array easy. We can simply remove certain items or adjust certain items, replace certain items with other items. Whereas if we were returning straight up HTML, this would prove a lot more difficult. In this case, we're changing the position of 2 paragraphs, which if we just had a flat HTML string would be challenging. We would have to use various functions in order to split up that string into a number of smaller strings, reposition them, and then re-render them. So while this is an example of how to use hook page alter, it's also a demonstration of the power of using render arrays as well. So I'm going to set a breakpoint right here, and we're going to use the debugger built into this editor in order to take a look at this page array that's being passed to it. Now, if you're curious about how I'm using the debugger here, there's a couple of videos that describe this in greater detail. But basically what we're doing is stopping the execution of Drupal at this line right here and taking a look at what's going on. So I'm going to set a breakpoint, and then I'm going to jump to the browser, and I'm going to set the debugging session to start. And I'm doing so with this little icon here in the lower right-hand corner, which is a plugin called EasyXDebug that you can get for Firebug. And then we need to clear Drupal's cache in order to register our hook function. As that's happening and this page gets ready to load, then the debug session will catch our breakpoint, and we can jump back to the editor, and we'll see we're stopped right here. And now we can go ahead and take a look at our page array. I'm going to go down here to our variables. We only have one variable, and I'm going to expand page. This contains a render array that includes all of the information that's needed in order to render our page. So there's a lot of data in it. What we're going to do is take a look at the section that contains the main content body. At the top level in the page array are a number of parameters for settings like show messages, theme, type, and theme wrappers. And then everything else is a region. So we have our main content region, our first sidebar, and then our footer region. Our main content is going to be in our content region, so I'm going to go ahead and expand that. And then inside of this is one parameter for a setting, sorted, and then one block called system main. And we're going to go ahead and expand that. Inside of this block is our content, and we might recognize some of these items from the page that we defined in earlier examples that includes string paragraph, and if we expand this, we have a type of markup, and the markup is just a simple paragraph. Pages can be returned as arrays. And we have another item called render array paragraph. This is also some markup, and this includes a paragraph that says that pages can be returned as render arrays. And then we have a third item called yRenderArrays. And this one is slightly more complex, but it simply passes some data to the item list theming function that we've used in several previous videos. And we do that by defining the theme as item list. We're giving it a title to create a heading 3 title above the item list, which is just part of the theme function. And then the items, which are a couple of bits about why render arrays are good. Okay, so because this is an array, we can then rearrange the content and replace out certain items. We can delete certain items. It's all just working with the array. And any changes that we make will get then pushed as the array moves to the rendering process and then displays on our page. So all we're doing is switching the ordering of some of the content. Because this is just nested arrays, we access it by grabbing our page array and getting the content section. Now remember, this is the content region of our page. And then the system main section is the block that we're dealing with, and this is the main content section. The next section is one of our items that we actually supplied through our page callback function, yRenderArrays, and that's right here if we're looking at the variable itself. And then what we're going to do is change the weight. And this is how we reorder the array. We can just assign it a weight value, and the lighter weights will show up first, and the heavier weights will show up later. And we're giving this a weight of -10. So we would expect that when this is applied, that our yRenderArrays section, which is our item list, is going to display at the top of our content. So let's go ahead and quit this breakpoint. And we're going to jump back to the browser. And as the page processes, you can see that we now have the list at the top and the paragraphs below that. Now this has been a very simple example of rearranging the render array of just the content of the page, but because the page array contains all of the regions and the blocks as well as configuration for each of those sections, it's a very powerful way to adjust the output of the page. We could rearrange blocks, we could even rearrange regions if we wanted to, and change the parameters on each one.